Hello everyone and welcome to the video lecture series of Mobile Application Development. Today students, we are going to understand about that what do we mean by the fragments, when the fragments are introduced in the Android, what are the main properties of the fragments and why we should use fragments. As well as we'll talk about the fragment lifecycle and the relationship of fragment lifecycle with activity lifecycle. Hi, this is your instructor Janice Shah. So let's begin to understand the history of the fragments. Students, as you can see over here that the fragment was firstly introduced in the year 2011. At the time, the Android version is 3.0 and the API version is 11. It is also known as honeycomb. Okay, so Fragment is introduced in the year of 2011 when Android has released its version honeycomb. But it is very interesting history of the fragments. Students, in the 2010, the iris 3.0 version has been released by the Apple, and Apple has launched its first tablet, I can say a first iPad in the market. As you can see, the iPad contains a larger screen than the smartphones. That's why Android gets the idea about to introduce something or make its OS compatible with the larger screens, tablets. So, in the year 2011, Android has introduced the honeycomb, and in honeycomb, they introduced fragments. Students, the Android has introduced the very first time fragments in the tablet of Motorola Zoom, which is a 10-inch tablet. Okay, so what is the purpose of the fragments? Why they need to introduce the fragments? We get the idea that when the Android has introduced the fragments, but what is the motto of that time? Okay, so let me tell you. So here, see, in the previous session we have talked about the activities. So just imagine a situation that this is a screen which contains our activity. So here the blue screen represents our activity. Now, just imagine a situation that right now the user in that particular portion. Now, what happens if the user click on any button? User may redirect it to another activity. So whatever the controls we have, that this is our smartphone, this is activity 1. On the above of the activity 1, we may get activity 2. So it will generate stack of the activities. So students, before the introduction of the fragments, Android has only activities. That means the whole control is driven by the activities only. If you want to move from one activity to another activity, then you obviously lose the control from the activity 1. So right now, if this is my activity 1 and I move towards the activity 2, okay, so at the time I lost the control over the activity 1. What happens or what to do if I want to get control back to the activity 1? I again click on the back button and move towards the activity 1. So this is the whole picture. Now, what you can do with the fragments? So fragment is nothing but it's a part of the activity. We can consider is at a sub activity. That means if you want to divide your activity in small number of parts, that parts are known as fragments. So sir, what is the benefit of this fragment? Students, the fragments benefit is that you can control individual fragments. That means you can control each and every fragments individually. If you want to close this fragment, if you want to modify some views or in this fragment, or you want to apply the action on a fragment 1 and get the output in fragment 2, then you can do that in a single activity. Okay, so here this is the activity 1 and activity 2 are there. But if I'm just making a portrait or just imagine a situation, if this is our tablet view, then what happens? See here, this is our activity 1, this is our activity 2, or these two different parts are known as fragment 1, fragment 2, and the screen that contains both fragment 1 and fragment 2 is known as activity. So here what happens? Here the two modular screens are accommodated in the same screen. Okay, in the same screen, students, we get the two modular screens. That these two modular screens are known as fragments. and the screen that contains two fragments is known as activity. So always remember the activity contains fragments or fragment is alive only when and when the activity exists. Now, so sir, what do we mean by the fragments exactly? Fragments is the part of the activity. Now, have you ever think about the functions? What is the purpose of the function in C? Or what is the purpose of the inheritance? Obviously, the reusability. The main purpose of the function and the inheritance is the reusability. That means you do not need to worry to or do not need to repeat the code again and again. You don't need to write it. You just need to write it once and call it at whenever you want to call. That's the main usage of functions that support the reusability. Students, fragment works same like that. It supports the reusability. How? I will explain in the next slide. But before that, let me just give a brief introduction of the fragment again. That fragment supports the reusability and modularity. So these two terms are there. One is reusability, one is modularity. What does it mean? I will definitely explain to you. Now, fragment is a piece of an activity. Fragment has its own layout and its own behavior. Even fragment has its own life cycle. But always remember, fragment works on activity. If this is activity, this is my fragment, then fragment life cycle is totally depend on the life cycle of activity. If activity started, fragment life cycle works. If activity destroyed, fragment is also destroyed. So fragment life cycle is works on the activity. Now students, as you can see, the fragment, that means one single fragment can be used in multiple activities. I have already told you that fragment supports the reusability. That means you just need to create a fragment over here in the first activity, then you can use that fragment in the activity 2, activity 3, activity 4, same like that. So students, when we talk about the fragments, so you can add the multiple fragments in a single activity. That means a single activity can contain the multiple fragments. Even fragment contains fragment. It might be possible. Okay. Now, the fragment life cycle is closely related to activity life cycle. I have already informed you. If the activity life cycle is paused, then the fragment life cycle is also paused. Okay. So fragment life cycle is totally dependent on the life cycle of the activity. Now, let's say further the concept of the fragment. Let's understand it. So here you can see this is my first figure. So the blue screen represents my activity, and on that particular activity, I just put down the three different fragments. They are fragment 1, fragment 2 and fragment 3. Now, here it is a fragment 4 is also there. So I just divided my whole screen into 4 different fragments activity, and I divided my whole activity into 4 different fragments by fragment 1, 2, 3 and 4. On the other end students, I have also 3 different fragments. They are fragment 2, 1 and 3, and last one is fragment 4. If you are able to see here, I have just used the same color for the fragment 4 in the both of the activity screens. Why? Just to understand the concept of reusability, that's here the fragment 4 is just get the reusable. Okay, I can create fragment in a one activity screen and can be used in another activity. So this is the concept of reusability of the fragments. If you want to understand with the real-time example, then I can show you it as well. So let's take the very first example of Instagram. Students, here I am showing the 3 different screens for the Instagram. This is all about the screens for the profile window. I can say this is all about the home and this is all about the searching data. So if you can see, this is a palette, the highlighted palette over there, the bottom navigation bar that contains home, search, reels, I can say the like button, and the last one is the profile icon. So all 5 options are there, all 5 buttons are there. What is happening over here? Where is the fragment? If you want to find out the fragment, then I can show you that here on the bottom of the part. Okay, you just imagine if this is my whole activity. Okay, this is my activity. I just need to create a list view over here or a grid view over here. Then I need to create another fragment. Okay, now when I click on the home particular button, like I can say click on the home button, then I move towards over here. Then what happens? This is another activity. So in activity 1, activity 2, in activity 1, activity 2, one thing is common, that is my bottom navigation. Again, students, in activity 3, one thing is common, that is my bottom navigation. Fine. So this bottom navigation bar, I can create it in as a fragment because I do not want to code it again and again, again and again in my various activities. What I did, I just create a fragment for that and use it in multiple activities. So that's the concept of the reusability that we can do in the fragment. Now, next one. Let me show another example over here, students. If we talk about the WhatsApp, what happens over here? See, the palette over there, that's the chat palette. See, here you found the chat section, again you found the calls, again you found the status. That particular navigation bar or termination bar is there. It is again a, what is that? Fragments. So we can also create such type of termination bar using the fragments as well, because it is just a repetitive part in each and every activity screens. Okay, so that is how we can understand the concept of fragments. Now, and again, the real-time example, that is all about the Gmail. So when we talk about the student's Gmail, so here it is, the picture shows the fragments on the main activity of the Gmail. Right? Gmail activities, the fragments like the primary button, the snooze, the start, the inbox, the send, each and everything is considered as a fragment because it contains the same view as the previous one. Fine. So this is all about the fragments real-time example. Now, how the fragment concept works in the tablet and the smartphone devices. So this is the best example. You can see over here, just imagine a situation. So this is my first mobile number screen. This is my smartphone screen, students. If you can see here, I can see the list of items like item 1, 2, 3 and 4. Okay. So here is the activity 1, activity A. It contains a fragment A. Fine. Now, when I click on the item, number 4, I am just redirecting to the another activity. So this is the activity B that contains fragment B. Now, see, I'm explaining the concept of modularity over here. Okay, so just focus it very carefully. That here, what happens? The two activities are there, activity A and activity B. Both the activity contains the different fragments, fragment A and fragment B. Fragment A contains a list of the items and fragment B contains a detailed view of the items. Now, if I am just opening this same to same activity in the tablet, then what happens over there? See, check it out. See, here, in a tablet view, what is happening over here? This is my list of the items, like item 1, 2, 3 and 4. The whole activity contains, only one activity is there, but it contains the two different fragments, like fragment A, fragment B. Here, students, my fragment A contains the list of the items and the fragment B contains the detailing overview. So when I click on any item, it will just open like this. So this is the example of the fragments. Fine. Now, have you ever seen such type of thing? So just imagine a situation of the WhatsApp. If you get the WhatsApp in a tablet view, okay, if you ever think like you may just found the chat list, like contact list, like contact 1, 2, 3 and 4, all the chat contact lists are open over here. When you click on a particular contact, you will redirect to the detailing of the chat. Okay. If you talk about the web WhatsApp, and if it is this function is available in the tablet, then what's happening over there? You can just click on the chat list and the chat is opening over here. Fine. So this is the concept of the fragments modularity. Modularity, that means you can create or you can combine two different fragments in the one single activity. That's why you can create a good proper view for the tablet. So user will get the larger view of the multiple activities and interact with both of them. This can be happen with the fragments only. Now, let's talk about the life cycle of the fragments. Students, do you know about the activity life cycle? If yes, then the fragment life cycle is closely related to activity life cycle. So, can you tell me what are the basic steps for the activity life cycles? That when you just click on the launch icon button of your smartphone devices, then what happens over there? your activity just gets started. But first it is created. Activity gets created. That means on create method is called. Then after that, after on create, what happens with us? After on create, the on start, then on resume. So when the activity is in the on resume state, you can easily view the particular screen of the devices. Now, after resume, if the user click on the home button or click on another any button which is redirect to the other activity, your activity 1 is getting in the state of pause. And for a long period of time, if it is in the pause state, then it will redirect to the on stop method is called. Fine. So now when the on stop method is called, after that, if you just again get back to the activity, then from the on stop, the on start method is called, and on start method is merged with start, and again the activities get resumed. Fine. So after that, if you just close the app or the memory gets full, the activity get destroyed. Okay. So these are all about the activity lifecycle. Why I'm saying it again and again? Because your fragment life cycle is totally depend on that. How? Let me show you. See, the very first method is students on attach. When see the fragments are always there on the activity. Always remember, okay, students. This is my fragment. This is my activity. This is my fragment, which is merged with the activity. So you first need to attach your fragment on the activity part. Okay. After that, on the fragment also contains the view components. The view components like text view, plain text, button, the image button. These are all about the known as view components. These all view components are there on the fragments. Fine. So what we have right now, we have the activity, and on the above the activities means we get the fragments. On the above the fragments, we get the view components. Fine. So our first method is on attach. That means you just need to attach your fragment to the activity. Okay. So first method is attach. That means when the fragment instance is associated with an activity instance. Now, this method is called when the first on create method of the activity is called. Okay. Now, next when we talk about the fragment and the activity is nullified or initialized. That means the fragment and the activity is not fully initialized. What happens over here? On create method is called of the fragment. Okay, sorry. On create method is called for the activity, but still on attach method, the fragment is not fully created. Okay. So typically you get the method in the reference of the activity which uses the fragment for the further initialization part. That means you get the on attach method to just initialization the fragment for the further. Second method is on create. So in on create method is called when it is fragment is created. Okay. So when it starts to creating the fragment, the on create method of the fragment is called. It means the new fragment instance, we can say the new fragment object is initialized, which is always happens after it attached to the host. So what you need to do, first you just need to attach your fragment to the activity, and then at the time after that, students, the fragment instance is created, or we can say the initialized. Okay. Next method is on create view. See, after that the system calls the callback method, and it's time for the fragment to draw its user interface for the very first time. That means if, as I told you, that fragment contains the various views like image, button, text view, plain text, password. So such type of each and every view components is going to start to creating. So fragment starts to initializing the view components in it and start to draw the UI for you. That method is known as on create view. And finally, the on view created. So on view created method is called after the on create view. See, on create view, that means it's starting the creating of the view components. The on view created, this method is useful when you are inheriting the on create view method or implement to configure the resulting view in which the list fragments and then set up the adapter. So it's a whole part about to call after the on create view. So view created method is called after the on create view. So once your view components are successfully created, the on view create method is called, and when your activity is successfully created, students, the on activity created method is called. So when the on activity created method is called, when the activity is stop or start? No, never. The activity creator method is called when your method or activity is completed is created state. So, sir, what happens over here? See, students, the activity method is called like onCreate, but during the onCreate activity method, the four different methods are called for the fragments. That means only on the creation of the activity or after creating of the activity, the fragment is completed four different methods like onAttach, onCreate view, onView created, and the last one is onActivity created. Fine. So now the next one is the activity and the fragment instance. See, now in this, after calling this method, the instance or because the objects of the activity and the fragment both are successfully get created. Next is on start method. So when your activity is in the started state, the on start method is called for the fragment. When your activity is in a resume state, the on resume method is called for the fragment. When we talk about the pause, so system call method first when the user start to leaving the fragment or the fragment is not longer interactable. That means if you are not using the particular screen, that's the fragment is automatically get into the pause state. Okay. Now it occurs when the fragment transition process is done. So a fragment transition, that means when you are moving from one fragment to another, when you are adding something or when you are removing something from the fragments. At the time the on pause method is called. Now, on stop method. So students, on stop method is called after the on pause method. So always remember the fragment is going to be stopped by calling on stop method. At the very last time, students, we have the on destroy view. See, now the on destroy activity method contains three different methods: on destroy view, on destroy, and on detach of the fragments. See, first one is on destroy view. This method is called when the view and the related resources created by the fragments or created by the on create view method are removed from the activity view hierarchy. Then on destroy method is called when it is do the final cleanup of the fragment state, but still not guaranteed by the Android platform. The last one is on detach method. On detach method is called when you are just detaching the whole fragment from the activity section. Okay. So when we talk about the fragment lifecycle, since first fragment gets started, then the on attach method is called. After attaching fragment to the activity, we just need to create the fragment instance. Creating the fragment instance, we just need to bind the view components to the fragments. Then create view is completed, then the activity is created. This method is called when the activities get successfully created. Now, your activity instance and the fragment instance both are ready to interact with the user. That means your fragment is completely ready. When you call the start method and the resume method. At the time fragment is currently running and active. Now after that, if you are get back from one fragment to another fragment, or you just call one activity to another activity, or your fragment is add or removed, at the time the fragment goes into the pause state. So it is on pause, then on stop, after that on destroy view is created. Students, after on destroy view, we can say destroy is created, detach is created, and finally the fragment is ended. What is the relation between the fragment lifecycle and activity lifecycle? So here it is, students. See, when activity state is created, it's called the four different method of the fragment lifecycle, like on attach, on create view, and activity created. These all four methods are called when the activity state is created. Next, when the activity state is started, students, the fragment on start method is called, and right now the fragment is active and visible. On resume, the fragment is active and ready for the user interaction. See, in the first state, when the activity is created, the fragment is created and its layout is inflated. Layout is getting ready. Now, on the start, the fragment is active and visible to the user. When it is resumed, the fragment is active and ready for the user interaction. On pause, fragment is paused because the activity is paused. On the stop method, when the fragment is stopped or no longer available. On destroyed, the on destroy view, on destroy, and on detach. The three methods are called and fragment is get destroyed. So this is the relationship of the life cycle of activity and the fragment over here. Like see, the created is all four methods of the fragment. This is the fragment life cycle callbacks. This is the activity states. Okay. So activity when created, on attach, create, view, and activity created, all four methods has been called. When activity started, on start is called, resume is called, on pause, fragments on pause method is called, on stop, fragment on stop method is called, destroyed. So on destroy view, destroy, and on detach, all three methods has been successfully called. So when we talk about the types of the fragments, students, the fragments can be divided into different parts like single fragments, fragment transaction, the list of the fragments. In the single fragment, students, we have to show like single view on a single under user screen. These are the handheld devices such as mobile phone. Like we have the one smartphone over here, and we have just only one fragment over there. So on the activity, we have only one fragment is there. List fragments is used to for those for like special view feature. In this, there is a list where user can choose the sub activity. Like we can say WhatsApp chat feature. If you are opening the WhatsApp, you found that it's like person 1, person 2, person 3, person 4. When you click on the person 1, you will redirect on the next activity, or you can say sub activity. So that is known as a list fragment. Now, fragment transaction. So fragment transaction after the transition from the one fragment to another fragment, which is supported or switching from between two different fragments supported by the fragment transaction. We will learn about fragment transaction in detail. Now, what's next? So this is all introduction about the fragments. In the next lecture, we will talk about the types of the different fragments. How can we implement the fragment? How the fragment life cycle is really attached with the activity life cycle. We will definitely see the live practical session of implementing the fragment statically. Okay, as well as we can also see the how the fragment to use and program to implement it. So just keep watching this video series and wait for my next lecture for the understanding purpose of the fragment implementation. Till that, if you have any doubt, then please feel free to ask me. Thank you so much.